people who are coming though and going, we're talking about that. I want to talk about the draft a little bit, and everyone in the chat, definitely let us know your thoughts about this as well. Going into the draft this year, George, it seemed like there was a lot of talk about NXT being more involved, maybe becoming more of a third brand as they were talking. It seemed like they weren't particularly that involved outside of a few people getting drafted from them. So Carmelo Hayes, Blair Davenport, Ilya Dragunov, Lyra Valkyria, Dijak, and Kiana James. Were you disappointed that they weren't more involved? Do you like them being more like, I always call it like the college football of WWE? Or what were your thoughts on that situation?
I would have liked for them to make a big deal. I mean, I've been very critical on this draft process, or actually the presentation that it's been. I have this theory, actually, just to kind of sidetrack a little bit. This version of, or the presentation of what we've seen in the draft started in about 2019. And I feel like this is something that was pushed by Fox, because we've never seen it that this way, where the entire roster, even if you're going from the same brand to the same brand, we're gonna, oh, coming to Monday Night Raw is Jey Uso, and I'm like, he was already there, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
and I'm fingers crossed that, and again, this is me being very critical of the presentation of the draft, that this is the last year they'll do it, because they're not going to be on Fox next year. I feel like it was a Fox thing for them to push it this way. With that said, I would like more it to feel like an actual draft, but just for NXT.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said this on Friday as well, where treat that like the NFL draft, because the at least for me, I don't know about you as well, but at least for me, the brightest spots of this draft on Friday and Monday, when they would cut to the PC and
Mm-hmm.
show those people get drafted. That to me
Yeah.
was the absolute best part. Seeing Lyra, seeing Kiana, seeing Ilya, seeing Dijak, like that to me was the best part of the draft. So I'd like to see more of that, but actually make it like, you know, some of these stories, some of these backgrounds and things like that. Uh, with that said, if they implement that aspect of it, because obviously, and I like that they touched upon it today, the fact that the champions, like if you're going to draft from NXT, technically you should draft the NXT champion. But the fact that they
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it even today, that you can't draft champions, so that I kind of like that aspect of it. But keep it that. As far as NXT being in the draft, I I don't mind that it wasn't the way, or I don't mind the way it was done, because I like it when people randomly show up on NXT. I like it because it's like you never know who's going to show up. At the same time, you do have guys like, and I said this last week, you do have guys like, I think Omos going to NXT would be huge.
Everything he
No,
does is
yeah,
huge.
no pun intended. But for him to show up and maybe take this new NXT on CW era coming up in a few months into the next level, I think that can be big business. But with that said, I like the way it is. I like these random appearances that we see, because it makes it more special. Like, and it's like it's weird how it doesn't matter how devious you are on the main roster, you're like an automatic baby face when you show up in NXT. I think that's funny.
Yeah, I feel like I've always been of the mind, if you're going to call it a draft, you got to go all the way with it and make it
Hmm.
feel like a real, true draft. I think Beer Money and I are kind of on a similar plane. If you're going to do a draft, I think that in my mind, I would say instead of doing all these picks, I would just say like Raw gets 3 picks from SmackDown, SmackDown gets 3 picks from Raw, and then both shows get 3 picks from NXT,
So
and
yeah. Uh-huh.
so or something like that. Because I don't think it's just not exciting uh, to see Raw draft a Raw wrestler. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just like, oh, it's just a non-story.
Yeah, I
It
said
is,
this in the last
yeah.
week a lot. Is that I like the way they did it in 2004 and 2005. Like, I won't get into it. I won't bore anybody with how it was, but when you look back at those Raws, well, it was one Raw on 2004, but in 2005 it was like a whole month of just this SmackDown person shows up on Raw, this Raw person shows up on SmackDown. I like that. Like, so
Mhm.
because it was just a handful. Like, you think about just how it was. Like, they wasted so much time this past weekend, just drafting people to the same show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like you said, I mean, pretty much everything that was presented, the way you said it, the way it was in 04, 05, I think that's the way to go. And I feel like fingers crossed that this is the last time they're going to do it the way it's done.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. Did you like that? Do you think that NXT should be treated as a third brand? I feel like every year rumors go around that now it's going to be a third brand and they're going to get draft picks. They're going to be a part of this, and then it never happens. Is this something that you think is kind of a fan built narrative that it's going to happen, or do you think it should happen? What do you think about NXT getting to draft people?
Should it be presented as a third brand? Yes. Internally, will it ever be a third brand? No. Because we ain't never seen Roman Reigns in the main event of an NXT show, right? That would mean it's a third brand. Uh, emphasize the importance of it. Make these people feel like it's a big deal. But at the end of the day, like until you can be in NXT and not have to live in Orlando, or until you see the because I mean it's emotional for some of these people to get drafted from NXT to Raw or SmackDown. Why? Because even they know it's not a third brand. But again, present it, but internally, like we still know it's still a developmental brand.
Yeah, it's let me ask you this last thing on this. Because there are people there. What if the draft was only you could basically each show drafted three people from NXT, let's say.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm.
But then throughout you have NXT doing trades with the main roster, like short-term trades, like a football team where you say, "Hey, we're going to trade you I'm trying to remember who's we'll trade you Josh Briggs and Wesley for 3 months, and we get Bobby Lashley, or something like that. Like, so that way you're trading things and like they're getting some main roster time for a little bit. You're getting the Bobby Lashley thing, but you're also not breaking the rules of a draft, if that makes sense.
I do like that aspect of it. I wish they would do a little bit more as far as like contracts where, they make such a big deal. They made such a big deal about Braun Breaker signing on SmackDown, only for him to be drafted on Raw like a month or two later. So I like that aspect of these kind of transactions happening. Um, I'm all for it. It's one of those instances where I think you have a good idea, but let's see if it's executed well.
Mhm.